You know that feeling when your day finally slows down and you just want to relax, unplug, and feel good? That's where Mood.com comes in. They're changing the game, delivering legal THC products right to your door, no shady dealers, and absolutely no medical card required, just good vibes and better sleep, shipped straight from their farm to your couch. From delicious THC gummies, smooth vape pens, to premium THC flower, Mood has it all. And everything's federally legal under the 2018 Farm Bill. Yeah, this isn't some loophole. It's the real deal. Head to mood.com and use code FIRST20 for 20% off your first order. That's MOOD.com. Find your mood.
Think about the app you've been wanting to build. Sell something you've created, run your community, manage your business, or launch your next idea. Now, imagine it's live before today's over. Meet Base44, the fastest way to turn any idea into a fully functional app. No code, no waiting, just describe what you want and watch it come together. Backend, design, and all in minutes. A real product ready to share. From idea to live app fast. Start building today at base44.com.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Labor Day sale and get 35% off paints and stains August 22nd through September 4th. With prices starting at $31.84, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Hey everyone, Gabe Dunn here. I am reporting to you live from a summer camp that I am at this weekend for trans men. If the audio sounds different, that's why. And I'll be back next week. But if you're listening to this on Tuesday, I'm still there. So hello. It has been really affirming and wonderful, and I've made a lot of friends, and I'm still processing it. So I will report back probably next week more about my experience. In the meantime, please enjoy this episode with writer Hamilton Nolan. He is the author of one of my favorite Substack newsletters, and he's also been one of the voices covering labor unions and labor activism. He has a book out called The Hammer. I have long admired Hamilton's work because I was working at Thought Catalog in the 2010s when he was at Gawker. We never really crossed paths, but I read his work and was just like a longtime fan. So I'm excited to sort of merge that era of New York media together and in this episode, and also to talk to someone who is an expert in this field about how labor unions collide with anti-fascism work right now and the ways that everything is intersectional, basically, and how labor unions are important today and are necessary to help us fight proactively and in a meaningful way that will create results right now, and what we can learn from what the labor unions are up to, and how all of it can come together to make us stronger against this authoritarian regime. So please enjoy this episode, and I'll see you guys next week.
You told a lot of lies about achievement. They caught you when they got you to believe it. Thumb and finger held to their foreheads in an L shape, trapped in a capitalist hellscape. Let's fight back and have some talks about class and the massive cost of the disasters brought to fascists and Nazis, fat cats and fox. It's 1,000 natural shocks. A Bad with Money podcast.
Hello, and welcome to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. I'm your host, Gabe S. Dunn, and I'm very excited about our guest today because I am an avid Substack reader, and I rediscovered you from Gawker to this Substack, which is really great. And then I was so excited to see that you've gotten into labor reporting because I remember you being very talented at Gawker. So can you tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. My name is Hamilton Nolan. I am a journalist, write about labor and politics, have a Substack called How Things Work, and I wrote a book about the labor movement last year called The Hammer. So I am happy to be here.
So I know your book looks at the past and then kind of connects that to the future. Has a lot changed since your book came out to now, like this current moment? I'm sure it really has.
Yeah, it was a funny experience because I wrote a book, and the whole point of the book is basically like reviving organized labor and unionizing millions more people is really the key to kind of saving American democracy and fixing the deepest problems of inequality that have been plaguing us for 50 years, that have created this oligarchy and destruction of democracy that we're all living through. And so the book came out in 2024, and the thesis of the book is like we really need to unionize people widely at scale all over the country and increase union density. And then obviously, like, since the book came out, everything has gone in the opposite direction of everything I said. So yeah, unfortunately, writers cannot control the world, but yeah, we're fucked, but it's been an interesting experience to watch.
But you can imagine a better world.
Absolutely. And I mean, I one of the things that I hope people take from all the stuff I write about the labor movement is, a lot of people don't think about the labor movement. A lot of people don't think about labor unions because they have declined for so long, and they have gotten so small in America that today less than 1 in 10 workers is a union member today, and that used to be 1 in 3 in the 1950s. So like the scale of decline has been huge. And so we've gotten to the point when I think a lot of people who are looking at, the ways that America is broken and can see the problems very clearly, it doesn't occur to them to think about labor organizing and the labor movement and labor unions as a path out of these problems. So, one of the basic messages I try to get across is like, look, don't just think about politics in terms of DC and politicians and all that. Think about how you as a working person can build power for yourself, and unions are the tool. So I think just trying to open a lot of people's eyes to the fact that, hey, unions exist. Unions are a tool that anybody with a job, whoever you are, wherever you are, you can unionize and you can build power for yourself, and you can make more money. You can make your life better, your family's life better, your coworkers' life better. And through that, the working class can build political power that can be used to kind of counterbalance a lot of the power of the oligarchy that we're seeing right now.
This show a little bit covers a 101 aspect. So can you tell my audience what is a union?
Yeah, a union is just simply you and your coworkers joining together to negotiate as a group. So, if you work in an office and there's 50 people that work in the office and you have a boss, normally in America, the way people think is like, well, the boss is like the dictator of the office. If the boss wants to cut your salary, if the boss wants to change your hours, if your boss wants to change the policies of the workplace, they just do that because they're like God at work. And in fact, that's not true. Unions are just you and your workers come together. You can form a legally recognized entity called a union, and your boss is legally obligated to sit down and negotiate with you. It's called collective bargaining. And that's really all it means. It's not a complicated process, but it's one that obviously in America under capitalism, they don't want working people thinking in those terms. They don't want you and the 50 people in your office being like, hey, you know what? If we all negotiated a contract together, the boss would have to pay us more. He'd have to treat us better. We could put policies in place. And most crucially, if you have a union, you can have a contract, which is something that, 90% of Americans do not work under a contract, and people don't think about that. But what that means is that your boss can do anything to you at any time. If you have a union, you negotiate a contract, and it's, for example, a 3-year contract, and the boss signs it, and like everything's in there. They cannot cut your salary. They cannot change your health care. They cannot change the policies because it is contractually guaranteed. So a union is just a way for working people to get together and organize and make their own life better in the workplace.
What do you think the fear is?
In America, businesses and companies understand that unions give power to workers, and obviously that they take that power away from the boss. They take that power away from the business owner. They take that power away from the investors. The people who typically have all the power in the workplace have to give some of that power to workers if they have a union. And so businesses have always had a very anti-union attitude, and they have very well-developed techniques for trying to stop people from unionizing. And so the two basic techniques are lying. So if you tell your boss that you want to unionize, the first thing they'll do is be like, that's a bad idea. We're going to go out of business. Unions are corrupt. There's a whole list of stuff they always say. And the other technique is intimidation and scaring people and threatening to fire people who unionize, or actually firing people who unionize, or cutting your hours, retaliating against you for trying to organize in the workplace. So that's where the fear comes from typically. But people should know that it is your absolute legal right as a working person to organize your workplace. That is a 100% guaranteed right that you have as a working person. And so all that retaliation that bosses and companies do against people who try to organize is illegal as a matter of law. And so that doesn't mean that it's easy, but it does mean that the law is on your side.
What can you do to enforce the law? Like if your boss is like, hey, I'm going to fire you for doing this.
Yeah, it's a hard question because even though the law is on the side of workers in America, the overall system of labor law is very weak in terms of the penalties that it gives to your boss. So, one thing that happens a lot is like workers at an Amazon warehouse, for example, will say, we want a union. They'll start organizing and signing people up for the union. And Amazon will come in and be like, you can't pass out this literature. You can't. They'll fire the organizers. They'll do all that retaliation, which is illegal. And they will, the workers and their union will file charges. You can file formal charges against the boss through the National Labor Relations Board, and it's a whole process. And after 2 years of hearings on what, the judge will come out and say, yes, Amazon broke the law. And the penalty is like they have to hang up a notice in the break room that's like, we're sorry for breaking the law and we won't do it again. And, sometimes people can get back pay, and sometimes they'll have to rehire people they fired. But, the penalties are so weak that it does make it hard to enforce it just by that legal process. So the real answer to the question of what you can do is that your boss needs workers. You would not work at this place if they did not need your work to be done. And so the real power that everybody has as a worker is the power of doing the work. And so as long as you stick together with your coworkers and say, look, if you do not treat us with respect, and if you violate the law and fire people who are organizing and things like that, we're not going to work for you. And that's the power of the strike. And the strike, is the fundamental power of the labor movement for hundreds of years now. Since the beginning of the labor movement, what working people understood, even the most beaten down, coal miners 100 years ago who had no rights and had, the boss had guns and owned their house and everything. But what those people understood was that, look, they need us to do the work. That is the power we have. And so if we strike, we can actually force the boss to treat us with respect, even though we don't have power in all those other ways.
What kind of things would cause someone to unionize or to want to unionize their workplace?
In a lot of cases, people will unionize because there's something wrong. And that's what gets people talking about, we have a problem here. So that could be anything from, your manager's a jerk, right? Your manager is playing favorites with the schedule. Like they're sleeping with one of the employees and they're giving them all the hours, or like, it could be anything like that. Your manager is racist. Like the boss is unfair, or our company just got bought by an evil private equity firm and we're scared that they're going to lay people off, or they are laying people off, or they're cutting our salaries, or, a lot of times it's something bad that happens that kind of triggers in people's mind the idea that, oh, we need some protection in this workplace. We can't just keep coasting along the way that we have been, with no contract, with no safety net, with nothing to protect us except the goodwill of the boss, right? So very typically it's something bad that causes people to want to unionize. But I would add there that it doesn't have to be that. And obviously common sense tells you that the best time to organize and get yourself a union that will protect you is before something bad happens, right? Because you get that union in place and then it will be there to protect you when the bad thing happens. So, I tell everybody, like, don't wait for something bad to happen. Everybody can and should have a union. It's your right. You are able to do it, and a lot of people don't think about it until it's too late. And so the best time to organize your workplace is right now, always.
Yeah, I remember we were trying to unionize at BuzzFeed when I was there, and Jonah Peretti was like, don't. It was like, we're a family, don't.
Right. I remember that. Yeah. And he was saying all the things that companies say, like, we're a family, this will be a bad idea, or like, we need flexibility.
It's going to complicate things.
Right. We need the flexibility because this is a new tech company and blah, blah, blah. I mean, what bosses don't tell you when they make those speeches is, like, you negotiate the contract. And so you as the workers can bargain for whatever you want in your contract. So, like, when the boss is like, we don't want to have set hours. I mean, the only way you're going to have set hours is if you, the workers, are like, we want set hours and we're going to negotiate for that in our contract, right? You all get to collectively decide what you do and don't bargain for in your contract. So it's extremely misleading the way that bosses talk about unions, as if a union is going to force you, the workers, to do certain things that will be bad for you. And the reality is that you all, the workers, sit down and say, what do we want, right? What do we want to put in this contract? And it can be anything you want. And then, the only person who can deny you what you want is the boss, who's telling you not to have a union in the first place. And, I just on that point, like, we unionized at Gawker, a little bit before you all were trying to unionize at BuzzFeed, and we signed our first union contract right before the company got bankrupted in a lawsuit funded by Peter Thiel. But when Gawker got bankrupted in that lawsuit and sold to Univision in bankruptcy, none of us had our salaries cut, right? And nothing changed because we had that union contract. So we had that demonstration really fast of the value of having that union contract, because we got slammed and had the bad thing happen right after we signed that contract.
No matter what our day looks like, we need nourishment that fuels us. Kachava's whole body meal shakes will keep your body and mind nourished all day. The Kachava new strawberry flavor is bursting with real strawberry and benefits. Plus, the matcha just fuels me with a flavor that I would already be getting. One thing that I like to do to incorporate Kachava into my daily routine is I add peanut butter and a little bit of iced coffee, and it helps me stay energized, focused, and calm. It's basically a way that I can grab a breakfast on the go, and it's super easy to make a superfood-packed shake with Kachava. All the good stuff your mind and body crave for whole body health. With every 2 scoops of Kachava, you get 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. There are no artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners. Non-GMO, no soy, no animal products, no gluten, and no preservatives. Rethink your definition of fast food. It mixes into a smooth and creamy shake, whether you use a shaker bottle or a blender, and it's a comprehensive all-in-one meal. Think protein shake, meal replacement, greens and veggies, essential vitamins and minerals, and so much more. You've never tasted strawberry like this. Go to Kachava.com and use code BADMONEY for 15% off your order. That's Kachava, Kachava.com, code BADMONEY for 15% off.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Labor Day sale and get 35% off paints and stains August 22nd through September 4th. With prices starting at $31.84, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
what about like Uber or like gig economy unionizing when you don't have a set workplace or necessarily know your coworkers?
Yeah, it's a lot trickier because the law in America is that the only people who can legally form, the kind of union that we've been talking about are full-time employees. So, W-2 employees and employees who are classified as independent contractors like Uber drivers, delivery people, and tons of other people that you can think of across the whole economy are not legally allowed to form a union like the union that we've been talking about. And that is, by the way, the biggest reason why companies are trying to make everybody independent contractors. The reason why these companies want to have independent contractors instead of employees is not because they're like, oh, you love flexibility, this is great. Like, that's not the reason. The reason is that if you're an independent contractor, you are not allowed to unionize, and you lose a whole shitload of rights that are guaranteed to people who are full-time employees. And so it's a lot trickier for those people, but that's something that the labor movement recognizes, and there has been a lot of organizing. So even if you can't form a formal union, you can still organize with your coworkers. And there's been a lot of organizing of Uber drivers and Los Deliveristas in New York who have just gone out and said, hey, we can kind of act like a union. Organizing is its own form of power. So if you can sit down with your coworkers and be like, we're all in the same boat here, we all have the same needs, let's form a group and let's act collectively in our own self-interest, and let's agree to have each other's backs, that's the real source of power. And so if you can do that, you can still get the company to negotiate things with you, even if it's outside the framework of a legal union.
Has there been any help provided by social media shaming or getting the word out there or marketing that you are on strike? I know personally the Starbucks near my work, and Starbucks were boycotting, whatever, but near my work, they were closed for a while, and then everyone was gossiping on the street that it was because they were unionizing. And then mostly everyone at my workplace was like, get them. Don't worry, we'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that is like a form of solidarity that, people can show to workers who are trying to unionize, even if you don't work there, like you said, like you can support the Starbucks workers in their fight, if they ask you to boycott, or if they ask you to, if they're picketing, you can go and picket with them. You can go on social media and support them. You can donate to the strike funds, raising the visibility of workers who are in all these types of fights is really important, because those fights can get really lonely. Think about being a Starbucks worker, and their fight has been going on for years at this point, and they're up against a company that's worth billions and billions of dollars and has the whole team of lawyers and everything else and PR people. And so it is important, for regular people to be like, hey, I support you. Union strong, we're with you, like to see the stuff on social media, to see it in the regular media, for the morale of those workers, for one thing. But also, I think it's really valuable, just to kind of raise the profile of unions in general. And like, when I was reporting my book, I went all over the country and talked to, all types of different workers who were organizing. And one thing I heard a lot of was, regular working people who were like, I saw a story about Starbucks, or I saw a story about the Amazon union, and that put in my head, hey, why can't we do that here? That was something I heard over and over. So like, having those campaigns that are visible and get some attention can actually spread the concept of unionizing farther than you could ever imagine.
Why do you think it was more prevalent to be part of a union in the past than now? I know Reagan had something to do with it, because he always has something to do with it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. The short answer is like, businesses made it their goal to destroy unions, right? For all the reasons we already talked about, because unions give workers power, give workers more money, and businesses said, we want that power and we want that money. And they spent literally the past 70 plus years, on a legal campaign to make those labor laws weak, all those weak labor laws that we talked about, that's not an accident. That's because businesses make donations to politicians who will pass weak labor laws because they want weak unions, and also laws that make it hard to organize new unions, and right to work laws that make it difficult to sustain unions once you have them. All of that stuff is a very deliberate and purposeful campaign by business interests in America that has gone on since 1935, and still goes on today. So like the environment in America is just hostile to unions, and that has eroded the power of unions slowly but surely over time. There were some other factors, like when people were working in factories, it was a little easier to organize people, right? Because you work in an auto factory with 5,000 other people, and like a union organizer could stand outside the gate and you could sign up 1,000 people in a day or whatever. And
a real Norma Ray.
Right, exactly. And so, as industrial jobs declined, that was a really heavily unionized sector. But that said, like I said, unions are for everybody. So there's no reason why, just because people work in different kind of jobs today, they can't have unions, right? As the Starbucks workers are showing, they work at Starbucks, they don't work in auto factory, but they still deserve and need a union, and they're doing it. So like, people shouldn't think that, unions were just a thing for construction workers and they're just a thing for auto workers, and now jobs are different. Like that, those are lies that bosses tell people to get them not to unionize,
And they say, you're going to be paying dues for nothing, blah, 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 which is like always kind of scary.
Yeah, it's funny, like when we were unionized in Gawker, some people were like, well, we have to pay dues. Our dues are 1.5%. right, of your check is your union dues. And we're like, we guarantee that we will get a raise that is greater than these dues. Like we're like, if we don't bring you a contract with a raise that's bigger than the dues, then you can vote it down. That's fine. And so obviously, you will get a raise. It's very, very likely that you will make more money if you unionize, and you will make much more money than you're paying in union dues. And, this again is something that companies know, and they lie to workers. They're like, you have to pay. I mean, Delta is a big union buster. There are people trying to unionize Delta. And at one point they put up these posters in the workplace that had picture of like a PlayStation on it. And they were like, you could buy this PlayStation with the money they want you to pay in union dues, And it's like,
Jesus.
You're not mentioning that you're going to get a raise that's twice that much, So it's another kind of really misleading
2
thing.
PlayStations.
Right. You're gonna get 2 PlayStations for the union. Yeah.
When you talk about the boss, first of all, with Starbucks unionizing, it's each store independently has to do it, because there's no overarching system with which they could do that. But are they going against Howard Schultz or their boss at Starbucks?
Yeah. I mean, this is actually a really big issue in America, and the way that America does unions, that makes it hard to unionize a lot of people, which is, in America, you have to unionize at the level of the workplace. So Starbucks is organizing one store at a time, right? Rather than being able to organize the whole company at once. Or in a lot of other countries, they have something called sectoral bargaining, which is where you're like, the whole fast food industry, right, is going to be in this group, and we're going to negotiate a contract that covers the whole fast food industry at once.
Yeah.
Right. Which obviously would be a lot easier and more straightforward to give more people the benefits of those contracts. In America, you got to go one place at a time unionizing. So the way that our laws are make that a lot more difficult. But at Starbucks, if they can organize enough stores, they can get Starbucks to negotiate a contract with them that could potentially cover all the workers. And that's what they're trying to do.
But are you going against your boss that you see every day and it's awkward?
Yeah, no. I mean, you're not. Starbucks is negotiating with the corporate leadership of Starbucks Corporation, right? That's who they're negotiating with. Now it depends. If you work in a one person's insurance office, you would be negotiating with your boss. But like, it's also important to say, or a BuzzFeed, right? You would be negotiating with Jonah Peretti, who maybe you work with every day.
I never saw that guy.
Right. That's a bad example, probably. But like,
no, it's funny.
But it's also important to say that like a union is not an insult to your boss. Like a union is just being like, we want to have normal ass workplace protections here. Like it doesn't mean your boss is mean. It doesn't mean we hate the boss. Like maybe you hate the boss, but maybe you don't. I mean, I worked with bosses who I think are cool, and we still wanted to unionize because we want a contract and we want our pay guaranteed, and you want the basic things that a union gets you. So like that tactic is actually another union busting tactic that is very common and that bosses use a lot, unfortunately, which is being like acting as if it's a personal insult to them. They're like, I thought we got along so well.
Right.
I thought we were a family. Like, why would you do this? And you're like, look, this is not about you. This is not an insult to you. This is basic level of protection and respect for everybody that works here.
Yeah. When I've had those issues at work, I have said to like sometimes to a direct boss, like, I'm not mad at you. This is not, which is so silly to have to say, because it's like the idea of being at work. We've like messed with the idea of being at work as like, hey, I'm not mad at you. Right. Just heads up before I give you this information, I'm not mad at you.
Yeah. And I mean, if you turn the viewpoint around, it's like bosses and managers are always being like, we're a family. Like our most important asset is our employees, right? Our highest priority is our team and all that. Like that's the stuff they say. Until you're like, okay, can we get a contract? Then it's like, no, it's an insult to me. Like you don't work at a job to make your boss happy. Like that's not the point of a job, it's to pay, it's to survive. So like, it's actually kind of insulting from your manager or your supervisor or your boss to be like, on the one hand, we respect you and care for you so much. But as soon as you're like, can we get that in writing? They're like, absolutely not.
I have like a customer service job that I bandy from different stores. And at one of the stores, it was very interesting because you saying, these bosses need your labor. And I never saw the owners ever. And I was 100% one of the best employees there. Although my sister runs a restaurant and she told me that it's always the worst worker who says that they're the best worker. So
wow. Little undermining comment there.
I took it under advisement, but I was like, I'm going to leave, and they didn't care. And then once I left, I was like, I knew that things were going to fall apart, but there was such a disconnect between the bosses who I don't think had stepped inside one of the stores for 16 years. And the idea that me starting to leave and watching everything fall apart because I'm not there to like do all my little things.
Yeah. I mean, another good thing about unions is like you create this sort of structure that can actually tell the bosses how to run the place better, because the union is just all the employees in an organized structure. So like unions are very good at being like, if there's problems at work, who's going to know better than you, right? You, the employees know the workplace better in many cases than the boss, like exactly what you're talking about. So like, one reason why I always think it's kind of dumb for companies to be so hostile to unions is like companies that are smart enough to work with their unions and be like, this can be a productive team, can get that feedback in a really well-organized way and make the company better, just by listening to the employees.
100%. I've never thought of it that way. That's actually really smart. And I think this company is going to go under.
Yeah. In Europe, there are things called work councils that are like organized groups of employees that, meet with management. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, here's how we can make this company better, and if you have a union, the employees are more invested in the company. You know, if you just have a crappy job for a big company, you're like, what do I care if this company goes under? Like, it sucks and I hate my job. But if you have a good job and a good salary and you're happy and you have a strong union, then you're like, we want this company to succeed. And so like there are, in fact, places in the world where the company and the workers work together to make the companies better.
You've also been writing a lot on your Substack and sort of how can anyone not about sort of the political climate and what's going on. And you mentioned briefly that bosses would come and they'd just have guns. And I wonder if there is like a connection to now, because I feel like I've been like deeply involved in the anti-ICE protests downtown in Los Angeles. Like, you know, that's kind of been, we go to city council, we do all this stuff, meet with city council members privately if they want to. It's very rare. But, you know, very deeply involved on the ground. And I have just had the thought of like, they'll just shoot us. They'll just shoot us. They don't care at this point.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's that far-fetched, unfortunately. Like the more we see National Guard, you know, getting called out into American cities, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that you can put hundreds and thousands of National Guard people in a bunch of different cities all over in America, and nobody is ever going to pull a trigger. You know, it's just mathematically, the more you put, you know, cops and soldiers out in our cities and provoke people, that's definitely a fear that I have, you know, so stay safe out there. I think, you know, that's such an important cause right now, the ICE protests. And, you know, one of the values of the labor movement that I really respect a lot is that it's about solidarity, right? So you know, you're kind of teaching people when they organizing with your coworkers is kind of a way of teaching people like, look, solidarity means we all got each other's backs. And that can actually, you'll see people's politics change. You know, you can have somebody who's a white Republican who has never thought about any of this stuff go through a union drive, and through that process, learn about solidarity and start to understand those concepts, and people can then apply that out to the wider world, you know. So seeing what's happening to immigrants, you know, is an example like of where we have to have solidarity, you know, outside of the workplace, but that's the labor movement's responsibility too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that it would sort of bring to mind, hey, we can change this, we can do this, we can work together. It's just been really hard and disheartening because, I mean, I always say this, you don't have to agree, but maybe you do, having worked in internet media. But I'm like, people who haven't, I'm like, think of the dumbest person you know, times it by 3. That's most people.
Yes. Yes, I mean, right. If you read the stuff that people say on the internet all day, you're like, wow, there's a lot of morons in the world. That is definitely true.
And bootlickers and people that will side with their boss and people that will side with Howard Schultz, even though it's against their own interests. And it's been like increasingly difficult to communicate with people that this is like, I don't know if they feel like it's cringe to have a union and try. I don't know if they feel like it's not something like that they don't want to, even young people, like there is an element of we're going to try and get involved and we're more woke or whatever, mixed with, oh my God, that would be so awkward and embarrassing to do like a union drive.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things that makes organizing so frustrating, you know, and like the reality of organizing anywhere is like, it's fucking hard, you know, because you have to go through all that stuff. And like, you have to try to listen to all of people's crap, you know, and not just be like, shut up, idiot. Right. Because as soon as you say, shut up, idiot, you're not going to organize with that person. Like you've closed that door. So organizing it was funny, as you said, like if you're somebody who wrote on the internet for a living, like all writers on the internet are just like, you're all idiots. And like, you know, shut up, idiot was kind of like the tone of our writing. Right. So then when we had to organize, it's like, I had to learn an entirely new outlook on life because I was used to just writing things that are like, I'm right and you're wrong and shut the fuck up. And then when you're trying to organize, you know, like, no, you cannot have that attitude. You have to be like, look, let's talk and let's explain why, you know. So I do think the process of organizing, whether it's union organizing or community organizing or political organizing or all that stuff, you know, it does make you be like, how can I actually kind of get people to sort of come our way more than just being like, fuck off, you're all idiots, even though you still really want to say that to a lot of people.
That's been my thing now when people comment on my work with anti-ICE protests and stuff working on the ground in LA, is that when people write something stupid now, my reaction now is to write back like, I fight for you too. Even though you believe this way, I will make sure that your life is good. God bless you.
That's very mature.
That's my new stance.
No, it's good. I mean, I commend you for that. And yeah, I try to have that attitude also. And it's obviously a constant struggle because, you know, it's natural, I think, to get pissed off at people. But we do have to remember also that like people grew up in America and people, you know, all the propaganda that America produces, like that's what's been going in people's head for their whole lives. And so, you know, a lot of that stuff that can be frustrating and the way that people act against their own interests and, you know, bootlick and are racist and all that stuff is like, partly you're like, this is what comes from growing up in America. And, you know, we have to like try to work to get people out of that slowly. But yeah, it's always a struggle between that and getting pissed off at people.
Oh, so I have mainlined the podcast that you've been on, and it's such a thing that's talked about a lot is like the intersectionality of it. So not just people working, but talk of, you know, the Black Panthers working with unions because members of the Black Panthers were working at those places, or like the crossover of all the different groups together, you know, like it really takes not just solidarity amongst the people around you, but showing up for other groups and like, hey, this is actually going to help disabled people. Hey, this is actually going to help, you know, I think there's more cross section than people think, even with, you know, a big thing for me with the ICE stuff was I carry my psychiatric meds in my backpack. Because, I mean, I don't know if it'll do anything, but if I get arrested and I have to spend 4 days in jail, I will have serious issues. And so that's like part of it too, is like, are they getting mental health access? Are they getting, you know, which is like kind of this holistic look at things that I'm not sure people are viewing right now in the way that they may have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It's, you know, the labor movement and unions are not just like this thing in your workplace, like an HR department. You know, it's a way to be like, we all work to live, and how do we take care of working people, you know? And so when you talk about taking care of working people and taking care of the interests of everybody and having solidarity, you know, it's not just your salary. It's, you know, if somebody's oppressing you, that's a problem for me because I'm, you know, I am in solidarity with you. You know, I'm in your union. I'm part of the working class with you. Like we all have each other's back. Like, so that
we need an elevator because Steve's in a wheelchair.
Exactly. You know, and that's like literally a real issue that we had at one of the companies I worked at in our, you know, a big union issue. We had employees in a wheelchair and they couldn't get in the bathroom door. You know, so like that's
right.
And who's going to solve that problem? Not the company doesn't care, you know, so the union takes on that problem. So everything that you think about that are problems to people being oppressed in all types of ways, whether it's racism, whether it's, you know, gender discrimination, like all those things are union issues. And by extension, unions in the labor movement are political and are involved in these bigger struggles like ICE and all that. You know, immigrants are workers, like all of these things are connected. So yeah, in an ideal world, you know, you have a strong labor movement and strong unions, and they're like this base that can then support, you know, this whole universe of progressive causes and like anti-oppression work that we're all involved in.
Yeah, it has been interesting, assuming that everybody on the ground with us is leftist. There are people that are working with us that are libertarian. It was like kind of a whisper, like, did you know that Gary's a conservative? You know what I mean? And we were like, whoa. But that's because you're not going to agree politically with every person that you're working with. Even, downtown, it's not like everybody has. Do I have to sort of sometimes say, hey, that's a little anti-Semitic? Yeah, but like, fine. Or, somebody was taunting a DHS convoy and they made a sort of transphobic comment. And it's like, hey, man, but it's also like, we can't just, I've seen people talk about this a lot. Well, I'm unsafe. Are you unsafe or are you uncomfortable?
No, you're right. And it's part of it, I think, is like the difference between the stuff that we learn in books and the stuff that you learn from lived experience. Like I've been to union rallies at a strike by coal miners in Alabama, and I guarantee that most of those guys were probably Trump voters. They live in rural Alabama. They drive pickup trucks in every stereotype that you can think of. But what were they doing? What they were basically doing was socialism. They were doing socialism in action.
Mm-hmm.
They were on strike against a big company with a private equity owner, and they were trying to build power for the working class. Right. So it's like, if you go up to one of those guys and you're like, what do you think of socialism? They might say blah, blah, blah that they saw on Fox News. But like the lived reality of what people are doing, the same as you're talking about with ICE, like whatever they think their politics are, they're seeing something in the real world and they're like, this is fucked up and we have to act against it, and that's like the process of how people get good politics really is like through that lived experience. They will change in ways that just like yelling at each other through the media doesn't always do.
I want people to get off the internet and go do things in real life. But I sound I feel like I'm 37 and I've become old man yells at cloud. Like I feel like
well, it only gets worse. It only gets worse.
Oh, cool. Can you talk about following Sarah Nelson and what that was like and who she is?
Yeah, Sarah Nelson was one of the main characters in my book, and she is the head of the Association of Flight Attendants, which is America's biggest flight attendant union. It has 50,000 plus flight attendants in America. And she's a really kind of fiery, very progressive, great speaker, like just the type of union leader who I like tell people, to look up her speeches and watch them, to see like what it can be. She's the type of person who knows how to like rally people and also who has like a vision for the stuff that we're talking about, where it's not just, oh, we want to get better pay, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, we can have a better world through solidarity. And here's how we do it. So I followed her around for about a year when I was reporting the book and wrote about, some of her aspirations to kind of lead the entire labor movement. And then like, how hard that is and what a struggle it is to actually, sort of round up this huge disparate movement all over the country. And so it's not like something that had a fairy tale ending, but she's still out there. She's, they're trying to organize 25,000 flight attendants at Delta. So they're doing big things. And like, again, these are the big labor fights that are always going on that like, I really encourage people to look up and plug into and support and talk about because they always need attention on those things.
Yeah. I mean, it's just another industry where I was like, oh, flight attendants, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some other industries that you've seen?
There are unions in all types of industries, from construction workers to firefighters to teachers. Police, ironically, are one of the most heavily unionized industries. That one's a little. We won't go into that one. We won't go into that one.
I can't.
But
with that.
all the way up to restaurant workers, casino workers, hotel workers, the people that clean rooms in hotels, up to like.
And the casino workers have like a really strong union.
Extremely strong union. One of the strongest political forces in the state of Nevada is the union of the people that work in all the Vegas casinos, and they're a very progressive union, and they have created the middle class in Las Vegas. They have made those jobs middle class. And if they didn't exist, those would be terrible, shitty jobs, and all those people would be poor. So it's a great demonstration, but also like university professors, journalists, aeronautical engineers at Boeing. All those people are unionized. So again, like there is no job that cannot be unionized. And like some industries, there's really strong unions that exist that you can plug into. And some industries, it's like, we got to build this. Tech is really an industry that doesn't have very many unions. And it's really important for those workers to unionize, because if there are no unions in the industry at all that happens is the people that own those companies have all the power. And that is exactly what we saw when all those people were sitting behind Donald Trump on the stage at the inauguration, is like, here are 10 people who have too much power and no checks on their power.
The power of unions is kind of interesting, because I know you spoke some about on other shows about how there's a kind of a tension because these unions become places where they endorse a candidate. They become more politically involved in the sense that they endorse a candidate or they donate money or these kinds of things, which can you speak to kind of the tension of that? And sort of, I think there is a bit of like a, hey, that's not what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why unions have lost power so much over the past half century, in addition to all of the union busting stuff from the corporations that we talked about, is like they got a little comfortable, and unions always have to be organizing workers, right? That is the purpose of a union, is to give you a union if you don't have one. And so, however the economy changes and wherever the workers go, the labor movement got to go in there and organize those people. And that is something that, collectively we failed to do. And you can tell by the fact that we went from having 1 in 3 people in a union to 1 in 10. And so like, it's not that it's easy to do that, but one thing that happens sometimes is unions get big and they think more about protecting their own members that they already have than they think about, hey, we got to go out and organize the next people. And so, when you combine that through dozens and dozens of unions over decades, you get a decline in union membership. So, one of the big messages in my book is like new organizing, right? Going out and organizing the people who don't have unions into unions has to be the biggest priority of the labor movement. And instead, what you see in reality, not always, there are great unions all over the place, but in many cases, what you see is these unions being like, we just need to protect ourselves and what we already have, and trying to kind of sit in a little castle while the world burns down around you, and that is obviously not going to fly especially in the time that we're living through right now, when, all of us are under attack. And so like, we need more collective action. We need more solidarity. We need more like reaching out and trying to pull in the people who aren't part of unions, instead of just thinking about protecting what we already have.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I've been frustrated by people on the internet who make reels or comment saying, well, I feel so helpless. What can I do? Or like, why isn't anyone stopping this? Or time to rise up. And then like my friend showed me, there was like a thing about, City Hall, needing, we need to be there in the hallways and stuff. And there were 700 likes on the comment. And so he showed up that day. He was the only person.
That's a great comment on the internet. Yeah. I mean, it's a real thing that like, one of the worst things about the internet and social media is like, it gives you this simulation of doing something that doesn't actually do anything. Right. It's like a vacuum for people's political energy that doesn't accomplish anything. So yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. It's like, I always tell people just join an organization. Like, I don't even care what
literally
it is, man. Like whether it's DSA, whether it's, the ICE protests, like whether it's a union, like I don't care what it is, like volunteer at a soup kitchen, like just get involved in an organization where you are doing something in the real world and like use that as a base to start doing stuff, you know, and don't just yell on the internet. Yeah.
So can you tell my audience where we can find you and read your Substack, which I guess is yelling on the internet, but that's what I do as well.
That's right. Yes. I'm a huge hypocrite. I yell on the internet.
Me too.
My site is at hamiltonnolan.com. It's called How Things Work, and it's free to read. You can subscribe and read it for free, and you only have to pay if you want to and like it. And I have a book called The Hammer, which is all about the labor movement and stuff I've been talking about. You can find that wherever books are sold also.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me. That was a good talk.
1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast, is a production of Noted Bisexual, produced by Melisa D. Monts and Diamond MPrint Productions, edited by Diane Kang, post-production sound by Coco Llorens, and music by Zach Sherwin as sung by Sam Barbera. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Labor Day sale and get 35% off paints and stains August 22nd through September 4th. With prices starting at $31.84, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.